What's going on, everybody? 41 Jake here. I've got a guest today in person. Now, I know it's Corona. We have been around each other enough to know that we're both healthy and not sick. So we're doing this today, not on Zoom, which is fun. So, who with me today is Klodian Mitri, and he's not a 401k advisor. He's nothing to do with 401ks, but I think it's going to be a fun interview because his background is in a lot of different things, a lot of financial, and he's a CPA. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk a little about that and kind of his story, and then I want to hear kind of his experiences as a 401k participant in a mega plan with a large, one of the top 6 consulting firms in the country, not the big 4 because he's more of a consultant than on the tax side or whatever. So, Klodian, introduce yourself. Tell us your quick, I know you've got this massive long story, but tell us more about your genesis story, like where you came from, why you have such a cool name, all those kind of things.
So with a name like Klodian, it's not very Utahan or Chicagoan. I was actually born and raised in Albania. My family immigrated to the U.S. in 1997. So we've been here over 20 years. But with me, you can definitely, I feel very Americanized. But as soon as my mom and dad say a single word, you can definitely off the bat tell they're foreign. But
the best thing is you told me your name, how to remember it was Nickelodeon without the Nick.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, my roommate freshman year was named Nick. I was Klodian. Our name tags were together. It just looked like a poor spelling of Nickelodeon at Purdue.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, and when we first met, quick story, and then you can keep going. Someone in the neighborhood told me that Klodian moved in, and I was kind of training on my own, and I do a lot of riding and running, as you all know. And I reached out to Klodian and I said, hey, I'm not super crazy fast, but I can hold my own sometimes. And so he said, sure, I'm going to the track in the morning, which was an indoor track in the middle of winter. And so picked him up and we went to the track and we warmed up. And then he said, all right, let's go. And it was like a dead full sprint, faster than I run in like 10 years. And like that's how I got to know Klodian, and we've been friends since. So
yeah, Jake reached out to me to provide some context in the middle of a marathon build. So it was a quick 0 to 100, but it was awesome. Since then, Jake's become one of my closest friends, a mentor, an athlete in the business world, and it's definitely been a good relationship these past 6 months.
Yeah, it's been fun.
And now he's kicking my butt on the bike and running. So
no, only one day so far. So we'll work on that. But so you moved in '97 to Chicago.
Yep.
Right, and then stayed there, and then bounced around a few different fun areas like Hawaii and others.
Yep.
And then kind of how did that all come together? So now you're here.
Yeah, it's honestly been very interesting. When I graduated school, I had big dreams, right? I wanted to go to school in California, to Berkeley or Stanford. Everyone dreams of California, especially being from Chicago. But I'm very close to my family, and I couldn't get the guts to leave, so I ended up going to Purdue and Marquette University. So within driving distance from West Lafayette, Indiana, and then Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But then after I finished school, I worked in Chicago for about a year. I started with the Deloitte advisory practice. I got some really good experience, did that for a couple of years. And to be a little bit more strategic with my career, I decided to try to get some of that international business experience. So I stayed with Deloitte, but they had a global deployment program, and I got a year of experience working with US GAAP and IFRS, advisory and consulting work in Germany. So my wife and I, we literally had our daughter in November, moved to Germany that January. So it broke my parents' heart that I was seeing their first grandchild and moving them to a different country. So we had an amazing time in Germany. We learned a lot about how business is handled abroad. Because how major corporations, we see a lot of what Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies are doing here in the States, and the accounting and finance challenges that other companies globally are experiencing are so unique. They definitely don't follow a cookie cutter approach. So it was interesting to get insight to see how those companies are handling some of those accounting and finance challenges. After a year of that, we decided to move back. We moved back to Chicago. I say that loosely. We kind of spent 6 months or so living out of Airbnbs, hotels with family. We spent some time in Seattle, Utah, Chicago, a little bit of time in Boston, California, because we were trying to use this transition period to figure out where exactly we wanted to live. Now imagine doing that with a newborn child and a 1.5-year-old. So God bless my wife's heart, because none of this would have been possible without her. And then we decided to make the most of our last bit of freedom before I guess we settled down. And we ended up moving to Hawaii for a little over 6 months. We were on the island of Kauai. We thought it'd be a fun place to, take a little mini sabbatical. And
That's early. That's early in your career, but I like it.
The way I look at it, it's like I want to work my entire life because I enjoy the type of work that I do. I don't want to slave away and retire and then be bored. I want to find that balance between working hard my entire life because I enjoy the type of work that I do, while also enjoying my kids, my wife, now at the different stages of their life. That's
a key point. I want to talk about that because as a 401k advisor, I mean, our target market is the US, and we're seeing this huge shift of that mindset to, I don't want to just work my life away and hate every minute of it in hopes of retirement one day, this glorious picture of living in Hawaii at that point. You kind of flipped it around, tried Hawaii, got that kind of, out of your system. I lived in Hawaii for a couple years too during school. It's a little bit different situation, but having a career in Hawaii is very difficult in a lot of ways depending on what you do. But living the life you want to live earlier, I think, is a new, more and more common theme I hear from employees, right? And participants in 401ks are no longer looking at that as some big golden nugget they're going to save. They're trying to figure out, how can I make my life better now and still have something ready when I can't work, when there's no income.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, even with the sabbatical and being in Hawaii, it's truly hard, at least for me, to really disconnect. I would still open to my email every morning, see what pressing stuff I needed to do, even though I wasn't working per se. I wasn't billing anything, but I couldn't fully disconnect. But that's okay with me because I was still able to, during that couple hours in the morning, really dedicate to myself whatever I was doing for work. During the couple hours in the afternoon, I was really able to focus on my family and kids. But the other big reason why we were in Hawaii is the Ironman World Championships are in Kona, Hawaii. So being an elite Ironman athlete, I thought, what better way to train for the World Championships than train in Hawaii, which is comparable to living on the surface of the sun. So it was good to do some training out there, and I really got some good exposure to the elements, and I had one of my best races in the World Championships this past October. And then after that, we wrapped up our time in Kauai. We did a little location assessment, I guess, to figure out where exactly we were going to live. And ultimately, Utah won us over. The mountains were definitely calling us home. And, we've been here since January, and I've loved every single day so far.
Yeah, it's funny. The way that you approached your decision to move to Utah, I mean, your wife has family here, but I think the location assessment, that's kind of what you did for businesses in your career, which I think is interesting, the way that you just looked at everything, tried a few places, and then ultimately ended up here. And so you had an 8-year career with Deloitte, so one of the big 4 accounting firms that you're in the consulting side, so there's actually a couple other. So who are the top 6? So there's EY, PwC, Deloitte.
McKinsey's. So the big 6 for consulting and the big 4 for accounting are different because they focus on different skill sets. And with the big 4, you're more focused on having your CPA, versus the big 6 is more around management experience, having your MBA. So they approach the skill sets differently. However, they're both very demanding and dynamic fields to be in, because you're working with these major companies that have major accounting and finance challenges that they're not able to dedicate their resources, their time, their capital to. So that's why they bring on these advisors, these consultants, to really help make their operations more cost efficient to mitigate any risks that come with implementing a solution or anything else.
Yeah, when someone says I'm a consultant, I mean that's such a broad term. I mean, we use it in my industry. We consult. We're here to bring, I think, a wealth of experience, and that's kind of where your path took you. Even though you have your degrees in finance.
So I triple majored at accounting, finance, and marketing because I had no idea what I wanted to do.
So the little bit you had the marketing mixed in. That to me is always a good move.
I think I had to be the only person who did accounting and marketing. I remember my guidance counselor was like, "Are you sure you don't want to do accounting and finance?" I'm like, "I don't even want to do accounting," but I think accounting, it really helped me understand the foundation of business. And I'm really glad I did accounting, hence why I moved forward and got my CPA. But what I liked most about marketing is the fact that you're focused on the client experience, right? Those personable type skills that I think are very challenging to teach in school. That's why I think a lot of people study communications or marketing, but it's hard to really succeed the way that you want to, because those little niche skills that you can't learn in schools come with experience. And the way I look at it, it's like you either have it or not. It's tough to whether you have a customer or a client, it's really tough to sell confidence, to not sell, I don't know if that's the appropriate word, but to instill confidence in that person that you're talking to. Because if you're paying someone that amount of money, you want to feel comfortable with that. They know what they're doing with your company's money, your personal money, whether it's your 401k, your capital investments for your firm, whatever. You want to have that level of confidence that you can take it, move it to someone else, and you trust the decisions that they're doing.
Yeah, I see there's a lot of parallels between what you were doing from this high level, major size companies that I don't deal with, but the same mindset of I got to go in and I got to do a good job, and I have to give them advice to make a big decision, which is going to be very expensive, and they're paying me to do that. As a 401k advisor, it's a similar thing, but you're in this really small piece to the puzzle of keeping and retaining talent. But overall, you have to come in and market yourself. They have to trust and know that you're there and build that relationship so that you can continue to give them good advice. And so there's a ton of similarities, I think, into what we were doing, what we do on a daily basis. And I think that it's interesting because the 401k, we always kind of, I think as advisors, get lost sometimes in the weeds, and we don't really look outside of our industry. We only stick with our own little group. And so I love to bring people like Klodian around because it's another perspective that I haven't thought through. And so one of the things I want to talk to Klodian today about is his experience. Now, Deloitte has about 7,000 participants in their plan. It's another cool thing. When you have a 401k plan, I don't know if you know this, over 120 people, you have to pay for an audit. And they go through and kind of do this whole analysis. So I get a lot more data on a big plan. So Deloitte has $7 billion in their 401k. They have 7,000 participants. They do their plan through Vanguard directly. So when you get to those mega plans like that, advisors like myself aren't really a part of that. It's more of a full team that I think Vanguard would send to Deloitte and talk about the plan and probably do a full deep dive into numbers, probably once a year at most, maybe twice. But it's a different experience for him, in the fact that my plans, all my participants know me personally. They see my videos, they meet with me face to face. I mean, I'm able to do that. For him, though, I want to know your experience, because you already have a tax background, a little bit of, you have your CPA, you know kind of the whole reason behind a 401k from a financial standpoint. However, that doesn't really mean that you handled your 401k to the best you thought you could. And I want to know kind of what that experience was like from a mega plan and how to kind of learn from those experiences as advisors for whatever our niche is.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. Having that accounting background, I know how to account for standard IRAs. If the money goes into a Roth IRA, I know how to do the accounting for major corporations that have these retirement plans. However, when it came to how should I manage my money, I had zero idea. I started on Google. The first thing I saw was, if your company's going to max out that max amount that they will match. I'm like, all right, Deloitte does X percent. I'm going to do that.
I think Deloitte does 25% of the first 6.
Yep.
So it's a 1.5% match of what 6% they put in. So you probably figure that out, put your 6 in,
Yep.
get your 1.5 from them.
Yep.
And as you work up the ranks, they have other kind of profit sharing that they do from their plan design that I could see. But yeah, so you took the first step. I think that's smart, but you had to learn it on Google, not from
on Google. And then
from HR or
after
person.
Honestly, the only guidance that at least I think I got was the fact that you should increase your percent this much next year. And it was always increased by 1%. I think the 8 years I was at Deloitte, I don't think the only guidance was increased by 1% next year. And like, okay, let's do 1%. But ultimately I was being rather aggressive with my 401k. I was investing, I think I went up to 16% in my 401k.
That's awesome.
Not
many people would do that. That's pretty rare.
Yeah, I did a budget analysis, right? Just trying to see like, okay, this much money's coming in, this much money's going out for expenses, this much money is left over. I'm going to save this much for my 2 kids. What am I going to do with the rest of this money? Some I pulled away for investing in funds with TD Ameritrade. The other, I was like, you know what, Did
you roll it out to in-service distribution to an IRA?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, so with the rest amount of money, I was like, let's increase whatever I can in my Vanguard account. And it wasn't until, I'll be honest, until last year that I started doing supplementary analysis beyond matching 6%. And that's when I started like, okay, what should I be putting everything in? The only options was a Roth IRA or a standard 401k.
Yeah, you had both the Roth and the traditional. And how did you determine?
Probably not the best bet. I was asking my fellow coworkers who were about my age. But the thing is, like, my coworkers aren't 30 with 2 kids. My coworkers are 30, single, living their time of their life in Chicago. So we have different priorities. So how they were approaching their retirement was different than mine. Ultimately, to be on the safe side, I just split it down the middle, did 8% in Roth, 8% in standard, and that's just how I kind of approached it. But it was a very hands-off type approach. Vanguard, they were doing what they were doing. I was being aggressive with my 401k with the funds that I chose. And other than that, I didn't have much guidance, and it was something that I kind of had to research on my own and just.
Did they offer
was working out.
like remote meetings or any kind of like wellness, like different? Did you ever see emails about, hey, there's a 401k Zoom meeting you can jump on or anything like that, or was it all kind of just online and go check it out and there's tools?
I'm sure there were lots of tools available at our disposal, but it was one of those that I had to kind of go
You'd have
after.
To like really search
exactly,
for it.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I had a lot of other priorities. I think I could have been more strategic with the way I approached my 401k, but hindsight's 2020, and like I said, I had other things that I was focusing on.
Yeah, you're focused on your job. I mean, that's the whole point. Is even someone as experienced and knowledgeable in finance as yourself, the 401k you knew was important, so you took enough to take action, put money in, but coming to determination, should I do Roth or traditional? I see that all the time. People just split it. I want a little bit of both. Even people that are in the highest tax bracket, because it's a tax bracket question, and it's knowing what would be the most effective for me and how would I navigate the tax laws later when I want to spend it. But very few plans actually dive into that participant outcome after you're out of the plan. We don't do a good job of educating people on that, because we just rely on advisors to help them, and that's where, there's a big disconnect. So that's really, I'm glad you shared that, because I had kind of a similar experience long ago in my career when I worked at Goldman Sachs. Similar model, like I knew there was some money going in, but I didn't really put enough effort into it, even though I was a financial advisor. So, so we don't have to go much more into that if you want. I think it's helpful just to kind of get your perspective on that. But I want to switch gears, go back to kind of where the next chapter of Klodian is taking you. When I look at LinkedIn and I see a lot of the people that I'm working with and connected with, the first kind of step is working with a huge firm like that. I mean, I had that experience. I think a lot of people do, and I see some very successful executives that are running their own companies or high up in another company that have spent some time. You spent 8 years at Deloitte, kind of got a wealth of experience even internationally, which I think is a great perspective. What are you kind of, what do you want to do next? Have you had much time? You're kind of in this mode of transitioning from Deloitte and going into something else. What are you kind of seeing yourself wanting to do?
That's a good question. And, like how I started the interview podcast, I had no idea what I wanted to do in college. That's why I triple majored. I had, even after 8 years of having worked with major companies on some of the big carve-out transactions, location assessments, portfolio decisions that they've made with their real estate, for example, I'm still not sure what I want to do. They say that 1 year of consulting is comparable to about 3-4 years in industry, and I never really understood that until my first major project, where I had to present findings and solutions to the CFO. I that was mind-boggling to me, because straight out of college, I worked with United Airlines for a year, and pretty much the only interactions I ever had was I would do analysis, present findings, observations, and a path forward to the senior manager. That senior manager would work with the director. The director would work with the managing director, and there was multiple levels. With Deloitte and their advisory and consulting practice, it was the first time where I was, CFOs of these Fortune 500 companies are asking for my opinion, what they should do to improve their operations. And it was at that point that I finally understood, okay, this makes sense why 1 year of experience in the industry is comparable to 3-4 years, vice versa. 1 year of consulting advisory experience comparable to 3-4 years in industry, because you get that management leadership exposure that you wouldn't get elsewhere. You get to have the entire books, or you get interviews with stakeholders that are essentially running the operations of a company, and you really understand what makes a company run. And it's not only for one company, it's multiple companies. A lot of my projects ranged anywhere from 2 weeks to as much as a year. And over the years, I definitely have seen a lot of that exposure, and it's been very interesting. And I think...
And you usually think big, huge companies got everything figured out. That's what was a mind-opening for me, is the bigger company I went and worked with, they have less things figured out. There's more problems. There's still, every single day, it's chaos in departments, and someone like your help that has an outside perspective can really help them hone in on what they got to decide to do and how to pull the data in to make those decisions. Because life's a whole game of decision making with the information you have at the time. So the more information you have, the better decisions you ultimately can make, but they could still be completely wrong. So I think that's awesome. Your experience there, that's really, I think, been a valuable thing to do a ton of different things. I think you've got so much ahead of you, and the cool thing is, along the way, now you've learned more about just how a business operates, so you can apply that in many different principles.
Yeah, I think going forward, I'm excited to get a little bit more involved with data analytics, because companies gather so much of this data, but they're not really sure what to do with it, or how to move forward, or what kind of smart decisions to really make. So I'm excited to really work with companies, understand their data, help with strategic planning, forecasting, to really understand what that path forward looks like, but also helping leaderships understand how viable some of these solutions are to go forward, and have that transparency, and really understand if something is going to be successful before they've gone too far down the wrong hole. I was listening to a different podcast recently, and it was called Solutions, or Failing for Solutions. And that's common, right? You want to fail as fast as you can. But this company, I think it was a division of Google, they were giving bonuses and raises to employees that were failing their projects first.
Yeah, I remember. I think it's Google X.
Yeah, Google X. It was one of the TED Talks.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, can you imagine being in a room and being like, I have done so good on this project. This project has been going on for a year, but Jake's project failed within a week, and he's the one that's getting this raise, because the innovation that they're working with, it's major projects.
Yeah, he pushed it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if Jake can fail faster, he's a resource that they can dedicate to something else, to possibly getting to that finish line for an innovation that will actually change the world faster. And I just thought that was interesting. Like, I've always known, like, fail often and fail fast, but it wasn't until you kind of understand about the innovative side of a major company like Google X and what they're accomplishing. So,
and just moving forward, I mean, that's the whole idea, is you're going to fail. And in my industry, like, everybody still just follows the same path. We pull the 5,500 data. We know which plans we want to target, and then we just cold call. Like, everyone's stuck in this rut, and we're so afraid to get out there and actually try something new because we're afraid what someone will say about our video or whatever. And those are the most successful businesses. You look at the history, the ones that were able to take some risk. Maybe they had to pivot. Maybe they don't talk about all of the failures. They talk about the successes because they have a lot of success because they failed a lot. So, yeah, that's a really good. I can go on and on about that.
Yeah, and honestly, like, so to kind of give some perspective, I've been with Deloitte for all this time. My major project just ramped up. We helped a major company on the East Coast with a location assessment, and we analyzed their portfolio to help them understand consolidation opportunities, some action items that they can take to lower some of their overall real estate costs, and ultimately we ended up saving them, depending on the actions that they take in the foreseeable future, anywhere between $7 to $12 million per year over the next 5 years. So that's a huge savings for them, right, over a 2.5 month long project. But with everything kind of going on with COVID and clients being unwilling to invest their capital at the moment, I was not billing at the moment, so I was let go by Deloitte, which it's tough, I understand, but at the same time, a lot of people are like, oh, how are you doing? Like, you have all this experience. And to be honest, I've been working since I was 15. Like, at the pizza place down the street, I've always had to work just because it keeps me busy, keeps me engaged, whether it's a pizza place or a Deloitte consulting. But everyone's like, oh, are you worried? To be honest, it hasn't, it's definitely set in, but it's not something that I'm stressed about, at least at the moment. It's one of those things that I think about. It's how you respond to the challenges, right? Like, you're tested not when things are going great, because it's easy. When things are going good, everything is easy. You can call those challenges, but when things are hard, when things really get difficult, I think that's how you kind of see a person for who they really are and how they're really able to react when they're in that discomfort zone, right? So
like when I'm running hills.
Exactly, like when I'm running with Jacob Hills. So that's why I'm not stressed. I'm not worried. I feel like I have a lot.
I think the timing of that. I mean, the experience you were working through as far as helping assess the real estate decisions of a large corporation, that is critical right now in a lot of businesses. There's probably something you can do with that with COVID and everyone's remote. I mean, we're going to see a huge shift, I think, to remote working. And what does that mean for all this real estate that's out there that businesses own or have leased, or getting the plan together of how to work through that? I mean, there's probably something there to explore too.
Oh, a lot of it, like, we helped with an Eminence project right before. I was like, oh, we're helping put together some type of industry perspective or point of views, as they're called, to help companies understand what the heck does COVID mean for my workplace? What does it mean for all these facilities that I have? Am I going to be able to use any of these facilities? What's the future of a workplace going to look like? Do Jake and I have to have cubicles more than 6 feet apart? What about elevators? How many elevators do we need in a building? And is there going to be different shift work? Is there going to be people that come in every other week? So there's a lot of moving pieces, and this is something unique. It's not something we can compare to the Spanish flu because it's 2020. Things have changed so much since we had a major pandemic like that. And I think it's an interesting time, and a lot of companies are going to need to adapt. And I think it'll be
start an interesting COVID time, consulting, and that's your...
Yeah, right. Pandemic Consulting 101.
Seriously though, I mean, that even I was talking to someone else. They're talking about not kids not knowing facial expressions because we're all wearing masks when we see each other. Like, you can't tell someone how they're reacting to something as easy as we could before this pandemic. That's something you don't really think about after effects of that. My kids have been really good about masks. They haven't been like fighting it. They're on board. They'll actually it's fun to them to put them on and go into the store. But will that continue? Is this something that we'll just see as like we always have a mask with us? Who knows? But from a workplace standpoint, it's tough for a lot of different businesses, a lot of different career paths where you have to be in the office.
I think that's one of the pros that's going to come out of this, that people will understand the benefit of remote work. People invest so much time, whether it's commuting, getting ready for work. The standard 9 to 5 can be such a challenge for people. The way I look at it is, we're adults. I know that in business, I need to accomplish X, Y, Z, or my responsibilities are going to fall behind. The project's going to be delayed, etc. And if I'm not accomplishing these things in an appropriate amount of time, it's going to become apparent, whether it's to management, to our client, whatever. It's going to become apparent. And if you can't get your stuff done and it's become apparent, you're going to be like, oh, you're not able to produce. However, I don't think that needs to be accomplished through 9 to 5. We have so many responsibilities outside of work that if you're not handling that appropriately, you kind of don't have the mental well-being. So it's nice to be able to wake up, get done what you need to get done, spend some time with family, do some type of well-being workout, whether it's a yoga class or run, whatever. There's the way I look at it is,
you're good at that. Setting your priorities, scheduling it out, telling others this is what I'm doing, and communicating it. Right? Yeah. That's the key, is the communication factor. And as advisors, that was a big push for me to launch 401 Jake was, all right, now I can't go do my face-to-face meetings. Now I can't take prospects to lunch. How am I going to connect with people and still be personal to where they feel like they're getting that attention? And there's technology now to do that, but it's going to take some work. You have to manipulate and change how you're in your normal day-to-day. Your old habits have to become different, and that's hard to change. But communication is going to be the critical part to that whole shift, to tell others how you are going to be doing what you do to help bring value to them in their lives. And you're awesome at I think, just scheduling your day.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've been working remotely. If I'm not at a client, I'm working from home. So I've been able to work remote the past 8 years, and I feel like I've excelled at it. However, once COVID started and everyone else was working from home, it became so much more stressful for me, just because others that weren't working from home before weren't used to it, weren't really sure how to approach it, so they weren't respecting boundaries. There was more meetings, and it was starting to become a strain on my mental well-being, because my client was on the East Coast, so I'm having meetings from 6 o'clock and all the way till 9 o'clock working with people going on the West Coast. So there was a lot going on and a lot of moving pieces. And, everyone's like, oh, working from home is great. I have so much free time. It's like, because you're still adapting versus me, I'm trying to pick up all the extra slack of everyone else working with people that aren't used to working from home. Yeah. So I think a big part of it is being detail oriented, setting a long-term plan, but also having those short-term goals and what those accomplishments need to be, and making sure that you're communicating appropriately, staying in touch, but not only with the business, but with your wife, your family, your friends, and because there's a lot of moving pieces in our lives, and we need to have that attention to detail and that communication in all aspects without overwhelming ourselves.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, Klodian. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I'm doing whatever I can to connect you, because I think whoever you go to work with, however that pans out, I think they're going to get a ton of value from having you in their team. And so I'm excited. I wish I could pull you into 401ks exclusively, but I don't know if that's your jam yet. But I think, you've got a ton to give and a ton of experience. Even, like you said, 8 years, but and as a consultant, that's even a lot more bigger multiple of the experience you have and things you can do to help. So Reach out to Klodian if you know someone looking for some help in some of these areas. I mean, he's definitely out actively meeting with different people, interviewing. So I wanted to have him on here today, not because of that, but more because I wanted to hear his story of kind of how he became what he was doing, but also kind of his experience with the big brand like Deloitte with their mega plan. I think that's a good thing for us to think about as we work on our own 401k business, as you as a wholesaler, if you're watching this, as you work to connect with advisors and really help them hone in on who they're helping. If you are trying to work your way up the channel all the time, know that the 401k industry, as you get to bigger plans, changes dramatically. He never really got to see anybody face to face. There was a lot of tools and technology, but it was still kind of on his own. So one way you can add value, no matter what size you're in, is create this environment where you can have that personal touch. And that doesn't mean you sit on the phone all day long. That means you use technology to give out good content to people and find ways to connect with them. So that's a big push that I'm doing with 401 Jake to help people understand how to do that. And if you have questions or want to meet Klodian, just connect with him. I'll put his LinkedIn here in the notes. So thanks, Klodian. Anything to add?
No, my pleasure. Thanks.
Okay, we got to get done so he can get back to his kids, and maybe we'll sneak a swim or ride in sometime. I don't know. We always squeeze stuff in whenever we have a free minute.
Yep.
Okay. Have a great day, everybody.